All right, I think I'm going to kick us off. We may have some more folks join us, but I don't want to wait too long because we've got a pretty full schedule of amazing presenters. So I'm Brianna. I work for the Office of Sustainability, and I'm really excited for this Sustainability on Tap. So we have this every semester. Hopefully some of you have been to our real life version. We usually have this in Main 212. Melanie, can you see the waiting room? Are you able to admit people? Okay, cool. Yeah, so we usually have this in Main 212, and Black Star Co-op traditionally donates a keg of beer, hence the Sustainability on Tap, so that it's a really fun, interactive, casual networking opportunity for grad students and a great chance to learn about what grad students are doing. But we're excited to do this virtual version because it means we get some really fabulous alumni that are able to join us from all over the country, which is something we would not usually be able to do. So tonight we're going to have 8 grad students presenting and 6 alumni presenting. We're going to have folks go every other, so it should be keep us on our toes and be fun. I just realized I forgot my cowbell, so while Melanie's talking, I might run downstairs really fast and grab it. Everybody's going to have 3 minutes to present, and then I'm going to ring a cowbell to call them off stage. Presenters, you're going to see me with my cowbell, so you'll have a little bit of warning. Yeah, and it should be a fun night. Stick with us. The first hour is going to be presentations, and then the 30 minutes after that, we're going to have networking for grad students and alumni. So we have a couple different Zoom links for those rooms, and I'll mention those at the end. So I'm gonna go to my next slide. Melanie, I'm gonna hand it over to you, and I'm gonna run and get my cowbell.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Melanie Pierce-Hooper. I'm the Associate Director of Graduate Employer Education and Experiences. I work at Texas Career Engagement. So we are a department on campus that really kind of serves to increase equity and access for both students and employers for career services. So I work exclusively with grad students. So we have a team of us that work with master's, PhD, and postdocs. And as you can see, this is our team here on the slide. And we will help you with anything career related. So whether that's career exploration, whether it's refinement of your application materials, whether it's you want to talk about professionalism, you want to talk about mentorship, we can help you with that. So we have free confidential career advising appointments. So if you'd like to schedule an appointment with us, you can definitely do that through Hire U Texas, powered by Handshake. Or you can just go straight to our website and kind of see some of these events that we have going on. We're really excited to partner with the Office of Sustainability today to offer this, this event to you. And we're really excited to have our 6 alumni join us. We have 6 advanced degree alumni who are going to present about their own research and projects, and then you'll have an opportunity to network with them after the presentation. So it's a really special event. We're so lucky to have them, and so really excited to be here.
Awesome. Thank you, Melanie. And just a couple other things I wanted to mention before we kick off. This year, Office of Sustainability and University of Texas are a host institution for the Global Conference for Sustainability in Higher Education. It's a mouthful, but I assume all of you are interested in sustainability. So this is kind of the premier conference for sustainability in higher ed, and there's a lot of great equity talks if you're interested in diversity, equity, and inclusion, and that sort of thing. So if you have a UTexas email address, you can register for free. So just go to the sustainability website, and it's right there on the homepage. You can click through and get the instructions on registering. So check that out. It's later this month, and you'll be able to view all of the content for a month after that. So don't worry if you have exams during this time, plenty of time to watch this. Some really amazing keynotes. So I encourage you to go check out what's happening there. And then I also just wanted to quick highlight our social media handles. They're pretty straightforward. So if you're not already following us, take a look. It's a good way to kind of keep in the know on events and things like this that we're doing. All right, I've got my cowbell. So this is a special cowbell from a ski jumping competition here in Wisconsin. So I'm going on trend with my location. So we're going to kick off with our first presenter, Aisha, who's calling in from Turkey, which is awesome. So we're letting her start first so that she's not too tired. So Aisha, if you want to take it away, I'm going to set your timer for 3 minutes.
Sure. Yeah.
Are you ready, Aisha?
Yes, I do. Hopefully. We'll see. Like this. I can introduce myself.
Oh yeah, please introduce yourself. Go ahead.
Hi everyone. I'm from originally from Turkey. I have been doing PhD in US because of the COVID things. I need to come to Turkey anyway. So I'm in civil engineering department. I have a background from civil and environmental engineering. My PhD is in related building energy and environments. So, yeah, that's me.
All right, take it away, Aisha.
And today I'm presenting UT Green Funded Project, the impact of climate change on the energy demand of UT main campus. So you can go to the next slide. As I assume many of you know that buildings are in the world emit over 30% of global greenhouse gas emissions, and they are responsible for nearly 40% of global final energy use. So when it comes to UT, UT has like over 100 buildings that occupy approximately like 13 million square footage of building area. So, and then the annual consumption of UT is also 19,000 BTU per square feet. And by multiplying these numbers, we concluded that UT main campus consumes about 7 million BTU energy per day. Just to give an example, average annual energy consumption of someone in Texas is like 4 times lower than what UT's daily consumption is. The good thing is like about UT, UT has developed many strategies to lessen this harm, like in terms of energy consumption. So the main strategic plan, the sustainability department was to reduce annual energy consumption 20% by 2020, and they already achieved this goal. So in addition to this goal, the utility management department also with the sustainability department, they plan to reduce the average energy use intensity at least 2% annually. So in the next slides, you will see there's like a map. This map shows like the energy, like the CO2 emissions all around the world. And based on the consumption data, we found that UT, like we are responsible, just one person or like any faculty member is responsible for 19 pounds CO2 emission per day. However, World Health Organization reports on climate change and human health says that we should target 12 pounds CO2 emission per day. And this figure shows that like we already consume like much, like over the 2 ton. I tried to convert that 2 ton like per year. So it's like over that. So in our project, the next slides, please. So in our project, we propose to create energy model for UT main campus on a larger scale, because we already know that like most of the buildings, new buildings have individual modeling, but in the urban model, we will see the interaction of each building, and we can make decisions on refurbishing, reconstructing of new buildings. And the next slide, we are like, our project is in the early stage, but when we complete this project, we will be able to understand how UT buildings will perform under climate change, and then what the energy demand reduction measures could be if the buildings are renovated or reconstructed. Thank you.
Oh. All right, great job.
Thank you.
Aisha.
Sorry if I'm over 3 minutes.
You're great. And I also want to mention, I forgot to mention at the start, we're not going to have time for questions live. So if you have questions, please put them in the chat and our presenters will check the chat right after they present and answer any questions. All right, next up is our first alumni, Jen. Jen's a climate advisor with Natural Resource Defense Council and works with the city of Austin on their climate plan. So I'm going to hand it over to Jen to share a bit more about herself and her work.
All right, thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Jen Krieger, and I wanted to share a little bit with you today about, actually, can you advance to the next slide, please? About how I got from a rainforest and Longhorns loving preteen on the left side there to a UT Austin alumna currently called a climate advisor. Next slide, please. So I'm going to share a little bit of my journey, and this is where it all began for me in my 5th grade classroom in Austin, Texas, because I'm from Austin. We had a parent volunteer come in and do a slideshow because we still had slides back then, and it was all about Amazonian rainforest destruction. And it hit me hard, and I cried my little 5th grade eyes out, and I really and truly wanted to save all the tree frogs because that's what I cared about at the time. And eventually that morphed into wanting to save all beings from planetary destruction. So next slide, please. That then led me into thinking about where I wanted to go to school from undergrad and what I wanted to study. And I was one of those atypical kids that I actually knew that I wanted to do something to help take care of the planet for all of us. And I thought the best way to do that would be to study environmental science. So that took me to the University of Virginia. At the time, they had one of the early environmental science programs. And I absolutely loved hiking around the Virginia countryside and studying trees and rocks and streams. The field work was great, but I didn't so much love the traditional science lab work. I was kind of over titrations. And so about halfway through my undergrad career, I decided there might be some benefit to knowing how to talk about the science I was learning from other frames. So I ended up designing my own major, a second major, looking at sociology and psychology and marketing and economics, all through an environmental lens. So essentially I created today's environmental sustainability studies degree. And when I graduated, I got my first job as a consultant in Washington, DC. That first job allowed me to dabble in a little bit of everything from energy and efficiency and renewable energy programs. I actually followed around postal workers for a while, doing a postal delivery efficiency study, got to work on kind of technology to help clean up ships and trucks and planes, and understanding the impact of various federal government operations through NEPA work. So that was great. I got to explore, but most of my clients were government clients, and I decided that I felt one step removed from the change that I was trying to make. So that led me to the LBJ school. And at the LBJ school, if you go to the next slide, I ended up doing my research on with Dr. Michael Weber. I was one of his very first students, if not his first. And I did my research on the environmental fuel efficiency and safety advances of passenger vehicles. And then I also, while at the LBJ school, I interned for State Representative Donna Howard. I made it exactly one legislative session before I decided I hated the political side of it and I did not enjoy making the sausage of creating policy. So next I tried my hand at implementation by joining the city of Austin when they adopted their first climate change related policy in 2007. I was part of the team to try to put that into action. But what I found is that every couple of years or so, I get a little antsy. So I wandered over to AISD as their first sustainability person, did some more consulting, worked for a renewable energy company, and helped start a mini Austin Energy for some governments in California. Before, next slide, I came back to the city of Austin, where today I am helping again with their climate change work as part of a national grant program that I'm happy to share more about during the networking session.
All right, thank you, Jen. Next up, and yes, Jen, as well as the other alumni, will be at the networking session after this. So that'll be a great opportunity to ask more about their journey and the work they currently do. So next up is graduate student Sarah Summers. She is in the Religious Studies program. Sarah?
Thank you, Brianna and Melanie, for organizing this event and inviting me to speak. My name is Sarah Summers. I'm a second-year PhD student in the Religious Studies Department conducting ethnographic research on Unitarian Universalists, or UUs. Next slide, please. Unitarian Universalism identifies as a non-creedal faith, meaning there is no singular sacred scripture. At this time, there are 7 principles which represent some of their efforts to construct a religious identity. Here are 2 depictions of the principles, an abbreviated children's version and a circular representation of the full text. Notice the children's phrasing of the 7th principle, we care for the earth. In full, the 7th principle encircles the others and reads, respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. Next slide. True to their value of caring for the earth, Unitarian Universalists have an abundance of organizations dedicated solely to addressing environmental and climate justice. Congregations can become accredited by the UU Earth Ministry Group as green sanctuaries. There are also UU Climate Action Teams and Environmental Justice Pioneers Network, which focus on climate organizing and working with community partners, respectively. The Unitarian Universalist concern with climate justice, environmental activism, and sustainable living is part of their institutional identity. Next slide, please. But it is just one part. The understanding of the 7th principle has broadened over the years. For example, in 2007, it was suggested this principle provokes UUs to counter individualism and broader systems of oppression. Including the interconnectedness of all existence seems to function as a call to action for UUs to address all interconnected issues of injustice. UUs are seeming to work towards sustainability outside the traditional confines of addressing climate and seeking to establish sustainable systems within their congregations and for social structures and institutions at large. Last slide. While the 7th principle has drawn on the canonical understanding of sustainability as it relates to the environment, an 8th principle has been proposed, which could represent a new conceptualization of sustainability, inclusive of human systems. It calls on UUs to journey towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions. Beloved community, as envisioned by Dr. Martin Luther King, exemplifies a sustainable community. I hypothesize that UUs are comfortable engaging with spiritual practices which can be examined through the framework of sustainability, and the sentiments of the 8th principle will be assimilated into the individual religious identity, regardless of its formal adoption. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. Oh, lost my mouse. All right, next up is Kendall. So Kendall is another one of our alumni. He's the project manager. Oh, Sarah, you were done way ahead of time, so I didn't even have to ring my bell. Kendall is a project manager at National Renewable Energy Laboratories. So he's calling in from out of state. Welcome, Kendall.
Hey, everybody, how's it going? Yeah, so like was said, I'm a project manager at NREL, so a National Research Lab focused on renewable energy. And my projects right now that I work on focus on resiliency for the Army. So I develop projects as an opportunity developer. But I'll give a quick overview of kind of what my motivations are and some of the different projects that I've worked on throughout my work that kind of led me to where I am now. So next slide, please. So my motivations, and I think they really kind of inform, you know, what I study and where I work and what kind of projects I work on. I think primarily I just love working on complex problems, especially ones that, you know, are the interface between engineering and humans and how humans interact with the environment. And so that really has drawn me to, you know, the climate crisis and climate change, specifically thinking about how we can use renewables and energy solutions to help mitigate some of the problems that we're seeing. And across kind of all the work that I do, I really like to focus on, you know, how can we make that work apply equally and have, you know, tackle equity. And then within the work and in my workplace, thinking about diversity and inclusion. The next slide, please. So I've had a pretty broad background in terms of education, and I've used that across the different projects that I've worked on. So as an undergrad, I went to Stanford and studied political science. Decided that I wanted to hone some technical skills, went to UT Austin and really, switched focus and worked on civil and environmental engineering. And then just recently I was admitted for Harvard Business School, but I've deferred that for a year to continue the work that I'm doing, and also because of some of the COVID stuff going on now. So next slide, please. So across those different educational experiences that I had, I learned a lot of different skills, and I tried to express that across both the positions I've taken and the projects that I've done within those positions. So I worked at Rocky Mountain Institute, which is a nonprofit focusing on energy and renewables. And I did a number of different projects there. Starting out, I did about 2 years working in the US, focusing on how to give low-income folks better access to renewable energy, or energy business models that included renewables. Then I did about a year working in the Caribbean, really focusing on integrated resource planning, which is thinking about what the future energy systems in those places could look like and how to transition, especially with a mind to renewables. And then I spent the bulk of my time working in sub-Saharan Africa, thinking about how to better connect people to electricity, again, primarily driven by renewables. Next slide, please. So that brings me to where I am now, which I think really combines all the different things that I've worked on in my past and through my education. So I'm working at NREL, and the project I'm focusing on now is consulting with the Department of Defense, with the Army, which has a number of installations around the US. Those installations need to continue to work even when the power grid goes down. And so we really think about how can we make sure that the missions on those bases can continue to run, which integrates across a number of different things. First of all, solving the different complex problems of what needs to run, bringing in the renewables, but also conventional energy, and working within a very difficult environment in terms of the bureaucracy. So yeah, happy to answer questions across any of the things that I've done, and broadly about education and what kind of skills you get.
Awesome, thank you, Kendall. And Kendall will be there afterwards as well for the networking. Next up is graduate student Craig Ayers, correct me, I probably pronounced that wrong, who is in the Environmental and Water Resources Engineering program. Craig, you're up.
Hi, my name is Craig Ayers, and like Brianna said, I'm a PhD student in civil environmental engineering, and thankful for this opportunity. I'm happy to talk about my favorite bacteria to kill, Legionella pneumophila. Next slide, please. So as a developed society, we've done an amazing job eradicating gastrointestinal illness with proper water treatment, but in turn, this has created the perfect environment for this pathogen to thrive. And so Legionella pneumophila is the causative agent of Legionnaire's disease, which is a potentially fatal form of pneumonia. If any of this sounds familiar, it's been in the news a lot lately with COVID shutdowns, because stagnant water is what really promotes outbreaks. And even the CDC office that's supposed to be controlling this pathogen had to shut down when they detected Legionella when reopening. And next slide, please. So what makes Legionella unique is that the exposure route is inhalation as opposed to ingestion, which all our regulations are based on. So think about where you inhale aerosols or droplets, like in the shower, hot tubs, fountains. And Legionella is able to survive within our water distribution system by integrating into these like slimy biofilms on the pipe walls where they have sort of strengthened numbers. And you also have free living amoeba in the water system, which go along grazing the biofilms, kind of like little Pac-Men. And Legionella uniquely they've evolved to survive being eaten by an amoeba. And so they can replicate inside while using the host to protect them from conventional disinfection, creating this kind of Trojan horse mechanism. Next slide, please. So ideally, we would control Legionella in the distribution system before it ever reaches you. But this can be a problem because if chlorine residual fluctuates or drops at all, you get rampant regrowth of Legionella. It's always kind of like poised, ready to attack. So what I'm interested in is treatment at the tap or the point of use. And there's a huge blind spot here for efficacy against amoeba, which are really resilient species. Next slide, please. So what I'm working on is, they're really resistant inside amoebas. They're resistant in biofilms, but if you get them isolated alone, they're very vulnerable. So that's what we're trying to do. And I'm working on a point of use treatment technology that uses thermal energy from household microwaves, which are really accessible and low energy, to lyse open the amoeba and then inactivate the Legionella inside. So microwaves are a really low form of energy, which is nice, but we also need some sort of other material to augment and harness that energy. So we look at using nanotechnology and specifically silver materials to do that. Next slide. So what I've done so far is just kind of that last piece of that treatment schematic is looking at just inactivating Legionella on its own. And I've shown that incorporating silver with the microwave leads to rapid enhanced inactivation. And this was a really interesting synergy we discovered. So I've spent a lot of time probing that effect further. And then next steps, coming up pretty soon, we'll be incorporating amoeba and trying to treat that with the microwaves and then infect it with Legionella and further the treatment.
Thank you for giving us something else to be afraid of, but I'm glad that you're working on this. Thank you, Craig.
Yeah, I can ease any fears in the chat window if you want.
Yes, please feel free to post questions in the chat. All right, next up, our next alumni, Rocio Villalobos. She got her degree here at UT, a master's degree. And she is the Community Services Program Coordinator for the City of Austin Equity Office. Rocio, take it away.
Hi everyone, I'm Rocio Villalobos. I'll mainly share pictures and stories to tell you a little bit about my path. I grew up in East Austin as the youngest of three, and the way I've come to understand my story is that my life was shaped by two borders. One being the US-Mexico border that separated my family and that disrupted the migration route of my ancestors, and the other being the I-35 highway and the east-west divide and segregation that was created here in Austin as a result. Next slide. Growing up, there were a lot of things that I didn't understand about my community. I didn't understand why East Austin looked run down, why our schools were in poor condition, why everything seemed to look bigger, brighter, and shinier whenever we hopped on the bus and visited West Austin. I also didn't realize that the oil tank farms I walked by on my way to school that were at the intersection of Airport and Springdale had been responsible for poisoning the soil and water, causing people to develop cancer, die from cancer, and develop respiratory illnesses, among other things. Next slide. My social justice framework and racial equity analysis came to be shaped by Poder, people organized in the defense of earth and our resources. Poder is an environmental justice organization that was created in East Austin by two Chicanas, two women of color, after the community started organizing to get those oil tank farms out of the community. Poder helped me find my voice when I was 18 and in my second year of undergrad at UT, feeling very lost about my path. And they helped me realize that I wanted to dedicate my life to serving the community and helping to create a more just world. And furthermore, the work they did with the Young Scholars for Justice program, pictured here, which I was a part of, inspired me to make that program the focus of my master's thesis in the College of Education, where I focused on cultural studies and education and studied the impact of youth organizing and youth empowerment programs like the YSJ. Next slide. The lessons that I learned in grad school, but more importantly, the community, left a deep impact. I carried those lessons in every role I took, from working with grassroots leadership and doing organizing to close immigrant detention centers, to working as an advisor and social justice education coordinator at the UT Multicultural Engagement Center, to doing community outreach with Texas Appleseed and working on campaigns around the elimination of the school to prison pipeline, to working at West Cave, where a lot of my work was at the intersection of youth leadership development and racial equity in the outdoors. Next slide. I'm now working as the Immigrant Affairs Coordinator at the Equity Office, a role that I started at the end of March after we were in pandemic mode. Because of my background, I've become the point person for our office on issues related to the environment and education. I'm also on the steering committee for the city's climate equity plan, and I bring that equity lens into my personal life by advocating for racial equity in outdoor spaces through my role as a mentor in Explore Austin, which is an organization that seeks to connect young people of color to the outdoors, as well as by serving on the board of a local nonprofit called Ecology Action, which runs the Circle Acres Nature Preserve in East Austin, and more recently by joining the Running Industry Diversity Coalition. So my hope is for you is that if you're in school, that you don't lose sight of the things that are happening in the community, even as you're in grad school.
Thank you, Rocio. And she'll also be in our networking session after this. Next up, we have Katie. Katie is an MBA student, and she's actually working with our office this year.
Yeah, amazing. So my name is Katie Wells. I am an MBA student. However, today I'm going to talk to you about social media. So you can go ahead and advance, Brianna, because I got some, short-term things going on here. So we all know Instagram, TikTok, they're very popular. And even more so as we've all been stuck in our homes or in our apartments during this quarantine time. Most of the United States is on some form of social media, and a lot of that is the young generation. So yes, I'm an MBA student, but a couple years ago, I started a fun side project where I have an Instagram blog. So it's been very interesting as someone very passionate about sustainability to see sustainability thrive through social media. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what I've been seeing. And if you guys want to jump in the chat, and if you have any sustainability creators or fun projects or anything that you've seen, I'd love to read through them afterwards. But you can go ahead and hit the next slide, Brianna. All right, awesome. I'm going to call this the eco noise. So on Instagram, you can go ahead and advance. We'll pop up some hashtags here. Eco-friendly, sustainability, zero waste, climate change, they are trending. All right, there is a ton of video content out there, especially short form videos. You see static posts, but a lot of short form videos. And they're taking a couple different approaches. You've got the eco-friendly, just general. You've got the sustainability, how to reduce your waste, and then more educational with climate change. So next slide, we're going to talk first about education. So one of the main themes that we're seeing in these videos is education around different products, different terms, what they mean, climate change, and different corporations. So you're seeing it come from a bunch of different angles. On the one side, you've got these, startup corporations under the products that are sustainable deodorant or, recycled clothing, food brands, everything. And they're using these social media influencers to really boost naturally organic, get the spread, the knowledge out there. Other terms, what is the definition of sustainability? How do we tackle that problem? Climate change, really trying to make things digestible and visually engaging to appeal to the person who's on social media to scroll through funny videos of, ducks hidden with climate change knowledge. There you go. So the next one, beyond the education, you've got some inspiration. I'm sure you all have picked up a DIY, quarantine hobby, right? So a lot of these are sustainability focused. So, you got reusing things, making your own toothpaste or glue or whatever it is, upcycling current things you have. The start of quarantine, we're all digging through our closets trying to figure out what junk we have. There's been a big trend to how to reuse that junk and make it more valuable. So a lot of inspiration going on how to live zero waste. And then finally, there's been a call to action. So you can go ahead and advance for the next slide. So we're seeing a big push here on rallying around different topics or rallying around different viewpoints. So how to consume consciously, guide to sustainable living or guide to zero waste. What can you donate to? How can you support? What organizations exist? I've seen a lot of growth in terms of visibility to different organizations that might fly under the radar because they're not necessarily chic. Well, sustainability is chic now, everyone. Use your voice, advocate, donate, and support. And one thing that I think is very, very interesting, I started my blog 2 years ago, and sustainability, was seen as expensive or unattainable for the average person. Really, on TikTok and other social media platforms, they're breaking down the barriers, negative perceptions from gatekeeping. You have to buy all of these fancy sustainable compost bins for your countertop, or it has to look nice. It's not about aesthetic anymore. All right. It's about functionality, and it's about making it accessible to everyone. So that's a little spiel. And there's the cowbell. So I'm going to clock off.
Thank Katie. Yeah. Feel free if you want to drop your handle in the chat, share it with the crowd. Next up, our next alumni presenter, Christine Wheatley, got her PhD here at UT. She's the Executive Director of New Age Environmental Development. And Christine, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thanks, Brianna. Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Christine Wheatley, and I'm going to be talking very briefly about my current roles, my current projects, how I am applying my advanced degree skills to my current profession, and how I see my work contributing to sustainability efforts. So, first off, I am the Executive Director of New Age Environmental Development of Africa, also known as NEED Africa. And I also consult for the International Organization for Migration and serve as an adjunct professor at Galen University in Belize. Next slide, please.
Oops.
At Galen, I develop and teach online courses on migration management to immigration and customs officials and other key migration stakeholders in Belize. Climate Refugee Stories is a multimedia narrative public education and archiving project that documents stories of people around the world in the Americas, the Caribbean, Africa, and South Asia who have been displaced by the impacts of climate change and a global hardening of borders. My team and I are producing an ethnographic film that captures stories of returned migrants and coastal and island communities impacted by rising sea levels along Ghana's Atlantic coast, which covers a distance of over 300 miles and is home to 5 million residents. Next slide, please. Carbon Negative Ghana represents NEED Africa's comprehensive plan to turn all of Ghana's waste into green energy and Ghana into a carbon negative, zero waste nation through a three-pronged approach: waste to energy municipal waste recycling, biogas, and reforestation and afforestation. We project that after the 5th year of operation, Carbon Negative Ghana will reduce or sequester more than 2 million tons of greenhouse gases. The waste to energy plant will turn landfill waste into clean, emission-free synthetic gas that can be used for car and jet fuel, electricity, and heat. We'll set up biogas plants in hundreds of locations across the country, along with public toilets where sanitation is poor, and use the human waste as a source material for the biogas production, along with agricultural and animal waste to be used for electricity and heat. Next slide, please. I've applied and adapted my advanced degree skills and expertise to my profession in a variety of ways, including research such as monitoring and evaluation of NEED Africa projects, conducting interviews with climate refugees, as well as writing, teaching, migration scholarship, and macro interconnected thinking. I'd be happy to discuss this process further in the networking event that follows. Next slide, please. With projects like Carbon Negative Ghana, NEED Africa aims to make a big impact on how we address the tremendous volumes of harmful waste we create and on our ability to turn this waste into valuable, even profitable products, producing abundant, affordable green energy. The three-pronged approach allows us to utilize 2 distinct technologies to convert both organic and inorganic waste into energy and to harness the unique power of trees to draw carbon out of the atmosphere. By proposing practical solutions that can be replicated by other nations, by including local communities through the creation of thousands of green jobs, and by raising awareness about climate change through film and storytelling, we are confident that our efforts will have far-reaching impacts on sustainability. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Christine. You can find Christine after this in the networking sessions.
Yes, indeed.
All right, next up, Fallon from the Drama and Theater for Youth and Communities program here at UT. Take it away, Fallon.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so what do theater and sustainability have in common? First, I just want to say this is obviously a very small fragment of some larger research I did at my undergrad, but as you can see, this is a very busy map labeling all of the connections theater has to saving the earth. This only reaches a few branches of the sustainability tree, so I'm going to expand upon some and look at some others within sustainable practice in theater. There's a lot going on here, but I just want to point out that when we talk about built environments and community engagement and resilience, those principles of sustainability are absolutely at the heart of my theater praxis. Next slide, please. So here we have the 17 Sustainable Development Goals published by the UN. There's definitely an agenda here, and these goals have not been recently modified to account for the dramatic worldwide shifts in public health and racial inequality in the last 10 months. But I do think many of these goals still apply to sustainable practice in the theater world. So I'm going to highlight two. The first is number 4, quality education, and number 12, sustainable consumption and production. Next slide, please. I could not begin to describe the ways drama and education connect and draw from each other, but anyone who has a passion for the arts will tell you that it starts on the education level, much like instilling greener ideas, especially if we think about sustainable to mean meeting our own needs without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own. Sustainable theater practice has to begin with the young people. Next slide, please. Another way theaters can get involved with some of the 17 UN goals is through responsible consumption and production. I know we don't have time to go over everything that was on the initial web slide, but so many of the theater's problems have to do with not reusing what we have and not buying us enough materials to last a long time in the first place. I believe there is a way to prioritize sustainability without compromising design. Artists and green practitioners alike know the importance of integrating design, theory, and practice, and asking the hard questions about where do we measure up with the rest of the world? How can we be giving back more than we're taking? How can we be just a little bit greener? Last slide, please. Finally, I wanted to share some of those exact questions we're asking ourselves in the theater when it comes to sustainable goals. Where can we make some greener decisions? How are we active in the carbon positive and climate action community? One practice the Broadway Green Alliance has enacted is the position of a green captain, someone that is taking notice of all the opportunities we as a theater community have to make a better choice and holding us accountable for it. I encourage all of the systems, professions, and communities you're all engaged in to ask the same questions and maybe even enact a green captain in your own practices. Thank you.
All right. Jumping us ahead of schedule. That's great. Keeping us honest. All right, here we go. Melissa, Dr. Melissa Lutt is the Senior Research Scholar for the Center on Global Energy Policy at Columbia University, as well as a Principal Engineer at Yarcom Inc. Take it away, Melissa.
Hey all, so thanks for the invitation to join in. I love the diversity of the presentations. It's given between theater and Unitarian Church. I mean, it's fantastic, and love it because it shows that we all have a role to play in this. We're all, living this whole sustainability journey together. So my name is Melissa Lutt, and I am a Senior Research Scholar at the Center on Global Energy Policy at Columbia University. Jen and I have something in common. She was Dr. Michael Weber's first LBJ student, and I was his first engineering student back in the day. So that dates us. I've got more gray in my hair than I had back then, Jen, but there we go. Still think I'm looking good, so it works out. So I wanted to talk really quick about the work that we do. So I lead this team called the Power Sector and Renewables Research Initiative at Columbia University in the center. And really what we're trying to do there is to say we do great work in academia. It has real high levels of applicability in terms of how we develop policy, but policymakers struggle. And I know as a policymaker at different points in my career, you struggle to get access to the academic research in a way that is digestible and applicable for you on a timeline that really matters to you. So how do we bridge that gap? Take that great science, those great analytics, bring them in. Sorry, I'm hearing echo-ness and I don't know if it's me or not.
Not you.
Cool. So we'll go to the next slide. So my particular work focuses in on saying, all right, climate change is already happening. The evidence is very clear on this. It's affecting all of our lives right now. It's affecting our health. And the work that I do looks at greenhouse gas emissions, air pollution, energy systems, and how it's affecting our life today. And this is one of the main messages that came out of a report of a massive research collaboration that I'm a part of, have been for 6 years. And essentially says, look, the evidence is clear that the life of every child born today will be profoundly impacted by climate change unless we accelerate what we're doing. So we go to the next slide here. And effectively it says, if we choose a second path than the one we're on, so one where we actually limit global temperature rise, we can actually transform the health of children born today for a better future, so a healthier future. So we'll take it to the next slide. And at the intersection, at the heart of that second path is the energy sector. So I look at how our energy systems are affecting our health today, both through climate change and air pollution, and what we can do to actually maximize our health in the future. So how can we improve our health? So I'm an engineer by training. I have all of the degrees, the PhD as well as in engineering. I also went to the LBJ school and have that public policy degree. And I've spent the past 15 years working through the US, Europe, and Asia. And really the focus of my work is on, okay, what are the impacts of energy systems on our environment, on our health, on our communities, and on vulnerable people? Because while we're all affected by air pollution and climate change, we are not all affected equally. And the data are super clear on this. So as we go forward, how do we not grow those gaps, but actually narrow them? And I'll leave it at that.
Wonderful. Thank you, Melissa. Next up, a couple of grad students from Civil, Architectural, and Environmental Engineering, Bing and Danny.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Bing Han, and I'm presenting today with Danny Weeks, our project entitled Texas Futures Virtual Reality Experience. Next slide, please. We started this project with the objective of making the Planning Texas 2050 sustainability and resilience research memorable and accessible to those who we interact with. We developed the experience for the general Texas population that may not understand the research results easily, and the Texas policymakers who can shape our path to the future. We felt that an interactive and immersive experience would show the research results clearly and leave the players with a lasting understanding of how climate change and population growth will affect Texas over the next 30 years. Here, I'm gonna hand it over to Danny.
Thanks, Bing. And Brianna, if you can advance the slide. We're gonna drop our player right into the laboratory where we're conducting the sustainability research. The player's given a little bit of time to learn some VR functions like throwing objects and moving around their environment. When they teleport to the puzzle game, they're going to learn about the connections that the research brings up, like water, energy, urbanization, and ecosystems. And then we give them visual and audio clues to help them make links. They make these links based on a keyword, and then they are able to step back and get a little bit of feedback about what the research says about their links. And they get video clues and those aquariums on the table as ways to kind of help them through the thing and understand the research. Next, they jump over to the Texas Futures map, which displays our Texas Metro Observatory data. Move the slider up to 2050, and it shows you how the population grows in some of these Texas cities. Press the water button, and you're going to be able to see how that population growth also affects water usage and the impact of some of the mitigation strategies that the research suggests in lowering those. To move to the final thing, we put the orb over the player's head, and they're transported to a Texas street today. They'll get one more orb, and they put it on their head, and they're transported to a fake Texas street in 2050 that's much more crowded. It's the speedway here at Class Change. And with that, I'm going to hand it back to Bing to kind of close it out.
Next slide, please. Yeah, so in order to create this experience, it requires a very dedicated multidisciplinary team from the Department of Arts and Entertainment Technologies, Civil Architecture and Environmental Engineering, and Texas Advanced Computing Center. So our PIs give strategic guidance and technical advices while we develop the digital assets. This experience helped us refine our skills in virtual reality and the design of human-computer interaction. Next slide, please. Yeah, so through this project, we really hope that we have made sustainability and resilience research more accessible and memorable. That's our presentation today. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you both. Haven't stepped foot in a lab in a while, so that was cool. It was like we were there. All right, next up, alumni, Jason Hercules. He's the Customer Success Manager at Urban Footprint.
All right, thank you very much. So I'm going to talk a little bit about not only what I'm doing now, but my journey on how I got there. So when I entered into undergrad, I wanted to save the world. And so a little bit naive, a little bit broad of a goal there, but I think it helped me kind of lock in my ethos of what I wanted to focus on as I was going through undergrad. And I co-founded an environmental organization on campus that focused a lot on changing human behaviors, just simple things like trying to get people to appreciate gardening and recycling and those types of things. And lo and behold, when I finished undergrad, no one handed me and offered me a job to save the world. And so a little bit despondent and trying to figure that out, I fell into an internship that turned into a job at this place called South Face, which is down on the bottom right, where we worked on energy efficiency of homes. And it was great. I learned how simple things that we could do would change people's behavior and help us conserve energy. But I was also working on these huge houses that we would go certify and call them green when they were sort of out in the middle of nowhere and just really excessively large in a lot of instances. Next slide. So after that experience, I wanted to find a place that had a green program and had a lot of strength in that, in a city that was known for being sustainable and green, and with a university that also had that same kind of focus and had a lot of experts in the field. And lo and behold, of course, that brought me back to Texas, brought me to UT, where I went to the Community and Regional Planning program in the School of Architecture and really figured out the next step up from what I was doing in terms of energy efficient homes and buildings to trying to create more sustainable communities. Next slide. So when I finished my master's degree in community and regional planning, there's a fairly well-known nonprofit organization called the U.S. Green Building Council that was well-known for green buildings, and they were trying to step up there and level up from green buildings into more. And one of the things that they were doing was a green neighborhoods program called Lead for Neighborhood Development. And so I was fortunate to start working there and start to help build this framework that provided a blueprint and really a guidance for the best practices in sustainability for how to create green neighborhoods. But after a number of years of doing that, I realized that what we needed to do was shift from just having the best practices to helping people understand and implement these types of changes. And so an opportunity came together with Urban Footprint, where we developed software that helps planners and other professionals in the built environment world get the information at their fingertips and start to understand the types of changes they need to make to have positive outcomes. Next slide. And so as one of our taglines says, we provide location intelligence for smart cities. And so we bring a lot of the information together and make it available and feasible for practitioners and folks that don't have a lot of digital acuity understand how they can pull this information together and make the right decisions and really be integrated across resiliency, sustainability, environmental justice, ecological services. So whether it's understanding how all the 20 plus transit systems in the San Francisco Bay Area come together and what that means for people's ability to move around, or a city like Washington, D.C. that has access to transit, but you still want to understand where people have better transit or can move around better. Just things like that, which are pretty much staples of planning. We help bring that information together. Next slide. And then I even work with folks to help them understand things beyond that. So the next level of understanding. So where all the COVID hotspots are and how you can plan your responses to them, what's going to happen. And sadly, we're having an example of that in the Gulf Coast with storm surge for hurricanes, like having that information at your fingertips, how people can and should plan to deal with loss of jobs due to COVID, and understanding how you should plan on a long-term perspective when you need to balance the need of economic, environmental, and a number of hosts of other opportunities as well. So we help to bring all that information together to help people make decisions that are going to be sustainable in the long term. And that's how I contribute.
Thank you, Jason. And Jason will be around right after this at the networking session if you have questions for him. And I believe Mitch is our final presenter of the evening. It's apropos, he's going right after Jason. Mitch is a current community and regional planning graduate student. Take it away, Mitch.
Thank you. So I'm going to talk about a blue and green infrastructure for Hays County, Texas. So when we think of green infrastructure, we usually think of green buildings, solar panels, green roofs, things like that. But it also means a network of interconnected lands that are protected and that are basically natural. So our cities can be connected through transit, through roads, but we can also accomplish sustainable methods for both human and nature. So here we're going to create a network of green and blue spaces that can strengthen our collective environment. Next slide, please. So just some background on Hays County. It's unique that it's the actual fastest growing county in the Metroplex between Austin and San Antonio. From 2014 to 2030, it's going to be about 70% population growth increase. This means that regional planning should be happening now in order to conserve land before it's too late. New residents that are coming into the county will need access to ecosystem services such as parks, drinking water, and food. And also, by creating conservation networks, we can also protect people from the impacts of climate change by having that natural network in place. Next slide, please. So this is just some of the criteria I used for this analysis. I made a green and blue one. So I divided the data between blue being water-based and green being land-based. So we have endangered species, their habitats such as the golden cheek warbler and the Barton Spring salamander, tree canopy, park resources such as Jacob's Well, and pictured over there on the bottom left, hiking and path trails that are used by the public, drinking water that's accessed from the aquifers, and agricultural soils that are prime in nature and provide a local food economy. And also, I wanted to make sure we factored in flooding, which since such a big issue for Central Texas, and where not to build and develop land. Next slide, please. So this is my methods that I had so far. First, I created the blue index for the aquatic-based criteria, and you can see it's a little bit different from the green one because it uses that river system and aquifer system as its base. For the green index, it's all land-based, so it's primarily related to the adjacency to currently protected land, such as parks or habitat conservation areas. Then I combine the two together to make a composite of both. After that, I determine network connectivity. So this is based off of the best path available to connect the lands. After that, I also rank all properties in Hays County based on their suitability. Next slide, please. Last one, I think.
Missing a slide, I'm sorry.
Oh no, it's okay. I can riff off of it if you want.
All right.
So basically, you can kind of see on the top right image is what my findings were, preliminary findings. There's a majority concentration of land along the I-35 corridor directly to the west. So that's kind of the hill country frontier. There's also a concentration towards the western part of the county where there's a lot more resources as well. So I'm trying to formulate a habitat hub and corridor network based off of these results. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mitch. Sorry about the slide snafu. All right. Well, thank you to all of our presenters tonight, both our graduate students and our alumni. What we're going to do next is we've got 2 separate Zoom rooms that we're going to get opened up in just a moment here. I've got them listed here. These are going to be kind of loosely grouped as sustainable cities with our alumni who do more kind of urban city-based work, and then sustainable world with our alumni who do more kind of big picture, global or international work. There's a little bit of crossover there, but this is our best grouping we could figure out. So take a look at those codes. I'm also, looks like Melanie pasted them into the chat, made it easy on us. So please jump over to whichever room is of interest to you. We'll copy and paste these into the chats there too. So if at some point you want to swap and ask questions of the other alumni, feel free to do that. You don't have to stay the full 30 minutes in the first room you jump into. So we'll give everybody a few minutes, but please do jump over and join our alumni in one of the 2 rooms. Thank you all.